So the first mistake to avoid is not bringing the right gear or enough of it. So here is everything that you should need for an average day out sport climbing. First up, a dynamic climbing rope. I recommend one that is at least 60 meters. A harness, climbing shoes, chalk bag, a helmet. I like to bring at least 9 quick draws, a belay device, a few extra locking carabiners, a few slings to help build and extend anchors, and something that's not totally necessary, but I really recommend, are these belay glasses. They save you a lot of pain while belaying. So a lot of this gear was made by a company called Petzl, and Petzl is actually sponsoring this video, which I'm really excited about. But I want to say beforehand, I've been using Petzl gear for years now, long before they came in as a channel sponsor, so I really believe that they make some of the best stuff on the market, including this brand new belay device of theirs called the Neox, which I will be getting into a little later in this video.
Hey, before we get into the rest of this video, I want to announce a giveaway. That's right, I'm gonna be giving one of you guys a 6-pack of these blue, beautiful quick draws from Petzl to get you started on your sport climbing journey. These are my favorite quick draws I've ever used. Nice, sturdy, no annoying hook in the carabiner, nice curved gate here to clip in the rope. I love these things. So what do you need to do to have a chance to win this pack of quick draws? 1, you need to have a US mailing address. Sorry, international shipping is a little expensive. 2, you have to be subscribed to my YouTube channel, so if you aren't already, go ahead and just do that right now. And 3, you need to leave a comment underneath this video with your Instagram handle. But you could also like say something nice in the comment and maybe I'll be more inclined to pick that one, you never know. So, in 1 week's time from posting this video, I will be going through the comments, selecting one of you at random, I will message you on Instagram, and then we will figure out shipping and everything else, whatever. So, good luck in this giveaway. Remember to comment, subscribe, and yeah, I think that's it. All right, let's get back to the video.
So the second big mistake to avoid is to not treat your climbing rope with respect. I like to bring a rope tarp. It allows me to just throw the rope down on the ground, keep it clean. The other thing that I see a lot of people not doing at the crag, even more experienced people, is they'll just kind of take the bundle of the rope, throw it down, and then start belaying. Probably that's fine, but oftentimes you'll get tangles, you'll get knots. Your belayer's gonna have to work them out while you're stuck up there on the wall. So what I like to do is I like to just take literally just a minute beforehand to flake out the rope. First I'll tie a knot in the end of the rope just to create a nice safety backup. And then I'll just start letting the rope fall down onto the tarp in this nice natural way. So that way when we go to start climbing and belaying with this rope, it'll feed up in a really smooth way, just make for a really nice experience. All right, there we go. We have a nice flaked rope, end of the rope ready to tie into. So let's get all of our gear on, let's get kitted up, ready to climb.
And that's why we wear a helmet.
As a beginner climber looking for information online, especially about helmets, you will find probably both extremes. You will find people on the internet that say you have to always wear your helmet, and then you will find footage of professional climbers who never wear a helmet, it seems like. So you might be a little bit confused, like, what do I actually do? And I'll give an answer that is a little bit more middle ground, I like to think. So my rule is that the belayer always has to wear a helmet. There's no reason that the belayer should never wear a helmet. And the climber should almost always wear a helmet, but there's one exception to this. The only time that I won't wear a helmet when I'm climbing, when I'm lead climbing, is when I'm climbing a route that is hard, usually overhanging, where I feel like just the extra weight of the helmet, even though it's not a lot, I just feel like it gets a little bit in the way. And so taking it off, I don't know, helps me, at least mentally. But my rules have to be that I've climbed the route before, so I know what the route is like. I know where the falls are gonna be. I have to be certain that there is no loose rock on the climb. And I also have to feel confident that if I were to fall off at any point, that it would be a clean fall. So this is usually overhanging routes where I'm falling into space and there's no risk of me really swinging into the rock in like a dangerous way. But yeah, pretty much most of the time, almost all of the time, I am wearing a helmet while lead climbing. Do I look really attractive with my helmet?
Yeah.
You heard it here. Wear your helmets, folks. So before we even get started climbing, one of the most fundamental things to being an outdoor sport climber is being a good belayer. So I'm going to be focusing on lead belaying here. Top rope belaying is quite standard. You're just pulling in the slack, keeping them relatively tight. But lead belaying is a whole different beast, and it's a lot more complicated than it might seem at first. So for lead belaying, we're going to be using this brand new device from Petzl called the Neox. This is a similar device to their standard Gree, which is a great belay device, but the improvement that they've made is that it has this spinning wheel. What that allows is for rope to feed in and out a lot quicker, which is pretty much the fundamental thing you're doing when you're lead belaying. The three biggest mistakes to avoid while lead belaying are giving too much slack, giving not enough slack, and not keeping your hand on the brake strand. As long as you avoid those three mistakes, you're gonna be doing pretty well. Lead belaying is about constantly calculating with your climber. Will they hit the ground with how much rope is in the system? If so, I'm gonna be pulling slack out of the system, keeping them a little bit tighter. But then on the other hand, not keeping them too tight because they are going above their protection. And if you're keeping them tight, meaning that you're pulling down on them, that could also result in a dangerous fall.
Dude, come on. I'm pumping out. I'm gonna fall.
So it's giving them just enough slack so they have rope to clip in, rope to move around, but not so much that if they were to fall, they would hit the ground or any ledges that are on the climb.
And here are some other considerations for lead belaying. Using your body to move in towards the wall or move away from the wall is another great tool to give and take in slack really quickly. Also, especially when you are belaying somebody your weight or lighter than you, it's great to give what's called a soft catch, basically jumping up a little bit when the climber falls to keep them from slamming into the rock. This is a great example, although I do recommend wearing shoes while you belay. And finally, let's talk about the Petzl Neox. The most common concern about this new device is that because it has this fluid wheel to feed rope in and out quickly, that the rope will slip through the device more and therefore be less safe. But that is actually not the case. As long as you are keeping your hand on the brake strand, the Neox will lock up in the event of a fall. I personally think the Neox is a great device for teaching beginner lead belayers how to belay properly, because you can just use this simple tube-style belay technique. No need for any fancy Gree techniques of holding the device like this and defeating the cam. In the end, you should use whatever device you feel most comfortable with. Just remember to always keep your f***ing hand on the brake strand. God, I can't say it enough. God, keep your hand on the brake strand. Okay, all right, let's start climbing.
And here's a bonus tip. I'm going to show you how to tie into the rope perfectly every single time. So I'm going to take this much rope, middle of the chest, create a little loop, one twist, two twists, send the tail through. Now you got your starter figure eight. Going to feed it through the two hard points on my harness, pull it all the way in, and the key is pushing this rope, making sure this goes to the right, pushing this rope to the side and sticking it in that hole. It might be easier, you think, to just stick it in this hole, but that's going to eventually create a twist when you tighten it up. So I like to just create an opening there, stick it through here, do the figure eight follow through, And that is how you tie a perfect figure 8 knot every single time. Beautiful. No twists, perfectly parallel, totally great. So before we set off, I'll check that my partner's harness is good. So I'll make sure it's double backed, his leg loops are good, not twisted. He'll do the same with me. He'll also check that my knot is good. And then lastly, I'll check that the belay device is good. So his carabiner is locked and my end of the rope is going through the right end of the belay device. All right, so I'm climbing up. I'm aware that I'm not clipped into anything yet, so I'm just climbing cautiously. This is easy terrain though, until I get to my first bolt. This is sport climbing, so there's going to be incremental bolts along the way, usually every 6 feet, every 10 feet sometimes. Depends on the area, but most areas will have enough bolts to keep you safe while climbing. And also the bolter will have thought about the clipping position. So they're not gonna try to put bolts in the middle of moves that are really awkward where you have to release one hand and it's likely that you'll fall. They're gonna put bolts in positions like this where you can almost go hands-free. The next really series of questions you might have is why don't we just clip in with a single carabiner as opposed to these quick draws? This might be okay in some emergency situations, but the reason we don't do this is because it has a limited range of motion when it comes to twisting. So we use quick draws because they have much more of an ability to twist. If I'm going up and to the right or up and to the left, the quick draw will keep me a lot safer. A mistake that a lot of beginners will make, or sometimes even more experienced climbers if they're not paying attention, is they'll back clip it. And at first, when you're below the rope, this looks pretty harmless, right? Like it's just one little twist, one little cross right there. What could be so wrong about this, you might ask? Well, when you're below the bolt, it's not that big of a deal. But as you climb above the bolt, let's just pull this rope out, simulate me climbing above the bolt, right? The rope might be like this. This is me up here climbing. All that has to happen is for the right circumstances to fall and unclip. That wasn't very hard to do, and that could happen while you're lead climbing. So be sure that when you clip in, the rope that's coming up through the carabiner and going away from the rock towards you is going to your harness. Another common beginner mistake is something called Z-clipping, which will happen when you have two bolts that are closely spaced together. And what happens is I'm climbing, I'm gripped, I'm not really paying attention. I grab the rope from below the quick draw and I clip in. And when that's done, especially as I go higher up above the next bolt, is it creates this really awkward Z in the rope that A, adds a lot of rope drag, and B, has effectively done nothing to increase the height of my anchor point. So the key to avoiding this is quite simple, actually. All you have to do is when you go to clip in, make sure you're grabbing it from the knot, sliding it out, and then clipping in the next quick draw.
One of the biggest mistakes you can make while lead climbing is letting your leg get caught behind the rope. This is a surprisingly common mistake, even with experienced climbers, and it leads to probably the most dangerous kind of fall, where the climber gets flipped upside down by the rope when it tenses up. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to forget about your body and its relationship to the rope and a potential fall, but knowing how to manage all of that is part of the art form of lead climbing. There is no easy fix to this. It's just one of those things you have to be really mindful of. And to start, I recommend climbing routes that are well within your limit and being really intentional about the rope management with your legs. Because that foundation will eventually build your instincts so that when you actually go to climb a hard route, this proper rope management is kind of second nature.
All right, and now I've reached my anchors. So a lot of people will build an anchor with a sling, and that's totally valid, totally safe. I prefer, especially when you're just doing normal sport climbing, to just use quick draws. And using quick draws is okay as long as you first clip them to the actual bolts. That's key in any anchor. And you also want to make sure that the gates are going in opposite directions. That's called opposite and opposed. So this gate is going that way. This gate is going that way. Whew. Getting pumped just talking about this anchor. And this anchor specifically, the bolts are a little far apart. So that's a little bit of a tight angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend each one with sort of a half decomposed quick draw. And this is a totally valid technique for extending a quick draw if you need to make it longer for any reason on any sport climb. I'm just doing it right now for the anchor. So I'll clip one in and I'll clip a second one in, and there I have a totally safe, totally valid, oh my God. There I have a totally safe, totally valid top rope anchor. You can take it up. I'll yell down to take my belayer. They'll take it up. And that is setting up a top rope anchor. A little bit confusing. Usually you will not have to extend the anchor like I did here. Basically these bolts were too far apart to just use single quick draws. They would have been at too much of an angle like this, which actually, according to like physics, it starts to pull way more on each bolt than if it's more at an angle like this coming down. Anything less than 45 degrees is ideal, is what I hear from the physicists. Great, so now we've had this top rope anchor. We've had everybody who wants to climb climbed on top rope, and now I'm the last climber. So that means it's my turn to do what's called cleaning the anchor, which means I need to take all of our quick draws, all of our carabiners, slings, whatever you put up on here, off of the permanent anchors and just leave the permanent anchors. And it's worth keeping in mind that this is where probably a huge amount of accidents happen in climbing is beginners not knowing how to properly clean the anchors. And this is something that is definitely worth practicing on the ground. So again, if you find just two things to clip off of on the ground somewhere nice and safe, practice this process of cleaning the anchor. Whatever you develop is your process. Do it over and over and over again. That way, when you get up here, you can do it completely safe. Okay, so I get here to the top, to my anchor. And what I'm gonna first start out by doing is taking a personal anchor, which for me, in this case, is just a sling with a locking beaner, girth hitched to the two hard points on my harness. I'll take that and clip it into both of these quick draws, lock it up. You can give me a little bit of slack, dude. All right, so, oops. Great, so now I'm gonna weight that, make sure the climbing rope doesn't get stuck. And so now I am personal anchored into to the anchor. And I've got plenty of room here. I can reach my hands up to the anchors to work with this process for cleaning. So what I'm gonna start out by doing is pulling up a lot of slack. My belayer is still keeping me on belay down there, but I'm just gonna have them pull up a fair amount of slack. So let's say 7 feet or so. Enough to just feed the rope through the anchor and have plenty of room to work with. So what I'll do then is I'll take a bite of it and just tie a simple overhand knot. And what this is going to allow me to do, I'll take a single carabiner that I have on my harness. I could clip it into here on my harness loop, or I'll clip it into my belay loop. So that is now holding the rope for me, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to untie my knot from my harness. So again, my personal anchor is holding me. This knot, this rope is no longer doing anything, especially given because I have a lot of slack down there in the belay. So I'm going to completely untie myself here. Great. I'll even untie this. And what I'll do is I'll take it out of the carabiners here. And so now you can see why now I tied this knot, because if I were to drop this rope, there would be nothing tying it onto me, and then I would just be up here without a rope, and that would not be very good. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to thread it through. Usually on every sport climbing anchor, there will be, well, sometimes there's permanent carabiners up there, and if there are permanent carabiners up there, you can just clip into those super easy. But the most common anchor you're going to see in sport climbing are chains like these, right? They are rounded so that they won't damage the rope. So I'll stick the end of my rope through one, through the other. I like to think about keeping it in a straight line. That way it's not getting twisted at all. I'll pull it through, pull enough through so that I can tie in, again, just like I would on the ground. So take enough, tie my figure 8, put it through my hard points, and then do my figure 8 follow through as normal. Great. Now once I've tied this in, I'll double check it. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's the way to check a figure 8 knot. Going through the 2 hard points. Great. Now that that's tied in, I can undo this backup knot. Let all the slack go through. And now I can tell my belayer to start taking up the slack again. I can pull up on my anchor here to get onto the belayer's weight. All right, you can take it up. Great. So now I am completely on the belayer's weight. This anchor is completely loose. And so that means that what I'm doing here is going to hold me, and I can undo my personal anchor. I only undo this system once I'm fully on the weight of the rope again. Great. Also, something that can happen, you can see these carabiners are kind of stuck in there, and that's because I'm weighting the system. So I've already weighted it. I know it's safe, but to remove these 2 quick draws from the bolts, I'm going to have to get back on my own weight again. All right, you can give me some slack. This happens sometimes. It just depends on the anchor setup. And I'm totally safe. My belayer's got me, but now that it's loose, I can remove those quick draws like so. It can be a little bit of an awkward process. I can have my belayer take it up again, all the way. Great. And now I have cleaned the anchor successfully and safely, and I'm good to lower down and remove all the gear on the way down. All right, good to lower, dude.
Please, oh, please, won't you stick around? I don't want to say goodbye when the sun goes down. I want to keep you close, want to hold you tight.
All right, and my last set of tips or mistakes to avoid before I set you off back into the real world again really just have to do with being a cool person at the crag, having good crag ethics. And really that just has to do with respecting the people that are at the crag, that are sharing it with you, and the nature. So please don't be the person that is leaving trash at the crag, that is playing music when other people don't want to be listening to music. And also try to be mindful of the climb that you're on, not hogging it unnecessarily. Take your time, climb, have fun. But if other people want to climb the route that you're on, make sure that, that everybody gets their turn. And also never be afraid to ask questions. The climbing community, especially the outdoor climbing community in my experience, is so open and kind and generous. And so never be afraid to ask about anything, whether it's safety or just any questions you have. I really do feel so proud to call myself a climber. I love this sport. I love this community. I love you guys for watching to the end of this video and helping me with the algorithm. Thank you so much. I've left chapters so that you can come back to this video at any point and go to the specific section that you might have a question about. Yeah, hope you enjoyed. Remember to stay safe out there and have fun, and I will see you in the next video.